Hello and welcome back to the Edit Undo podcast. And we are back. It is the beginning of 2023, or somewhat the beginning. And we're here to try new things. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, a little bit of a bonus episode. We've decided to look at a couple of the articles that catch our interest and maybe do a little bit of a read and reaction to some of the aspects of it. And the first article we're going to be looking at today is about visual design trends in 2023. Myself and Steph being, product designers, I think, we might have at least an interesting perspective to provide, if nothing else. And so, with no further ado, let's get right to it.
Yeah, this is going to be nice and experimental. Also haven't really read through the articles, but we thought a nice one to get us going, considering it's also still the new year, kind of. It's middle of February right now, is to, these typical articles that we always see around, these are the predictions of the trends. So I found an article that is not necessarily specific to UX, it's more UI, but it's a little bit more all-encompassing. So it kind of relates to graphic design trends for 2023 and just visual trends. So the article is titled 2023 Visual Design Trends Guide. It is a Medium article written by Diana Malewicz. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that surname, but that's okay. I'm going to skip the intro part of the article because it's just her going on about welcoming us, and 99% of the examples are real products. That's always nice. And some trends stayed or evolved and clarified into something more specific. Some trends are hopefully gone for good. You will also find some old trends that are making a huge comeback in the industry. All right. Let's start and have a look and have a good time reading. The first trend we have is motion design. And the article reads, motion design has become huge, and you can probably see it everywhere. From micro interactions to complex animations, UI is no longer a static thing. Users expect it to be visually live and breathing. I can definitely relate to this. There's definitely a lot of motion going on. I recently, actually yesterday, in one of my projects also suggested that we add a little GIF movement to one of our call to actions. So we have this project where we have to show you some add-on products. And when you toggle on and off the add-on product, it obviously changes the overall price of your booking. And people often miss that, and there was a few different ways we could solve this from a UX point of view, and we came up with a solution, which was to use motion, where we actually show you like a little visual indicator highlighting the price for a few seconds, and then it dims. So yeah, I think this is definitely a trend that's been coming quite some time, actually, but maybe it's even more so this year.
Yeah, I think it is very cool, and it is also quite telling about the technology as well. I think as in a sense the operating systems and the supporting technology gets better, the ability to do things like these sort of super micro interactions becomes more plausible. Because I can remember there was a time when, like, if you had too many animations on a screen, the phone would kind of like slow down and the animations would be sort of jittery. But in a sense, the better the graphics cards in our phones become and so on, the more that you can actually do while still maintaining a smooth experience. So I think, motion is one of those things that's only going to get more ubiquitous, like in all of the different components and aspects of a UI. And I guess that's what this trend is speaking to.
Yeah, I guess that is a very good thing for all the motion designers out there. And they are quite a rare breed, I must say. I was recently doing a motion how-to video. Alfi was kind enough to do the voiceover for us. But But we were looking for motion designers, and I opted for someone I know personally because it's actually such a difficult thing to find good motion designers. But there's a few cool tools for designers out there. I personally use Lottie a lot. I'm sure a lot of the designers know it, but if you don't, go look out Lottie, Lottie. And they have like a collection of free GIFs and SVG animations that you can use. Yeah. What did you want to say, Alfie?
I just wanted to add, Lottie's actually about to release a sort of animation editor. So like their own software.
Oh, really?
Similarly how you have a Figma or something like that.
Yes.
It's got its own timeline and you can sort of edit and export your animation. So I think that's amazing. That's going to be definitely a big help, especially to some of the UI designers who don't have a lot of motion experience. I think Lottie makes the process a lot easier.
Yeah, you know, there's actually an old tool I discovered while I was still working at Ogilvy, which is back in 2017. It's called SV Gator, like an alligator. Yes, SVG Gator. I'll quickly share this tab and show you guys. If you're watching video, you'll see I'm also showcasing the article and the website. So this is also you can upload your SVG Illustrator file, and then the different layers are exposed, almost like After Effects, but After Effects for dummies, which is really nice. And then you can also animate the SVG, and you can actually export it as a SVG animation or .json file as well.
That's really cool.
I think they're going to do well now considering this new motion trend. All right, let's read a little bit further. Because of TikTok, Instagram, and constant motion that the users consume on a daily basis, people's attention span drops lower and lower. That's not a good thing. Some speculate we're at a level of a goldfish right now, or even lower than that.
That's cap. I'm sorry. Like as great as it is to be able to read these articles, I'm like, some of these things need evidence. I'm like, our attention span is not even close to a goldfish. That's just ridiculous.
You know, I agree and I disagree. I think context is everything. So there's certain things we do, tasks, that are more prone to less attention because they are built and crafted for less attention. And social media is one of them. So it is actually, I find it, seeing as I manage our social media and then managing the social media for Card Cahoots, I actually find it really hard to sometimes stay focused. So I'll like make a post and want to quickly go in and schedule the post or go post it on Instagram. And as I, click on it, it's not made for you to stay focused. As soon as I like log in and I get to our page, I'm like, shit, what was I like busy trying to do?
Yeah.
So I think we can definitely, the products are prone to induce less focus.
I understand that, but I think what you're saying makes sense, but I think what you're saying and what the articles say is not the same thing. Because when you say that our attention span has become less, it's like, I mean, let's say you're watching like a really, really good movie, or let's say you're watching Last of Us. I hope you're watching Last of Us, Stephanie.
Last of Us? No, I was thinking of This Is Us, which is a beautiful series.
No, The Last of Us. It's a TV show made about the game.
Last of Us. Which game?
It's also called The Last of Us. Like. Okay. Anyway, very, very good show. For those of you who haven't started watching it already, I'd highly, highly, highly recommend it. Probably the best series that's going to come out this year.
Okay.
But why was I even talking about that?
Because you have attention.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Of a goldfish.
No. Okay, here's my point. It's not like your attention span suddenly disappears when you're doing something engaging. It's like when you're doing something engaging, your attention stays focused. I think to say that TikTok and these things have made our attention span less, I think is wrong. I think because our attention span is low when we're on TikTok, we spend more of our day being sort of like unfocused and not really attentive to what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think it really is determined by what we're doing rather than the fact that social media has somehow changed our attention span. I don't think that's the case, at least not yet.
Don't you think though the younger generations that have grown up with social media, because they spend so much time engaging with products that are made to put you in a state of low attention or low lasting attention,
Shallow
and like
attention,
you're saying, it's kind of affecting the rest of your day, right? It's almost setting you up for failure. Because you're not training that muscle often. Don't you think like the younger generations, actually this might be more true, like their ability, that muscle isn't practiced as often?
I just don't think anything has got enough impact to change human evolution in one generation. Like I just don't think humans work that. If it was that easy to change the way we've evolved, humans would have been extinct a long time ago. Like I just think we're a little bit more resilient than like TikTok is not what's gonna like reduce us to goldfish.
Yeah. Okay, Diana. I really tried, but
Alfi says no.
Okay. To keep users involved and curious, we need to use motion to try and put some life into static screens and images so they are more immersive. So she is actually speaking of motion here as more an entertainment factor, where I was referring to motion being a very useful tool, which I guess in both instances, yeah.
Do you maybe want to expand a little bit? How do you mean an entertainment factor?
So she's saying here, to keep users involved and curious, we use motion to try and put some life into static screens. So I wouldn't actually advise for any designer to just use motion when you feel your screen doesn't have life in it, because that just seems like not a good reason to use motion. And that's where we get to the place of motion for the sake of motion, which can be a very, in my opinion, a very dangerous place to go. Because then we're just getting to the TikTok analogy again, where we're just purposely,
Yeah, I think the part of that stood out to me was a little bit less around the entertainment and more about the immersion. Because I think motion does increase the immersion of an element, because in the real world, things don't just stay still all the time. In some sense, that's a little bit unrealistic. And so if you can include just enough motion to give it a lifelike experience, I think that's what sort of creates the sense of immersion.
yeah. But you're on point, Alfie, what you just said. Using it because in real life, nothing stands still. So that's kind of the beautiful contrast that you are going to utilize in your work when you use motion design. So you need to be intentional. When do you want things to be like in real life? They have motion. And actually use the opposite to your advantage. When should they be completely still?
Yeah, because if I'm, for example, looking at this Duolingo screen, for those listening, it's a screen that's got a couple of coins on it, and then one of them looks like a button that you can press. And when I look at that, like for a piece of motion that I would expect out of this, if it were in real life, is when I scroll, I'd expect the coins to flash a little bit. And in a sense, that's almost a useless motion from a functional perspective. It doesn't actually do anything, but it creates a level of immersion that this previous iteration of Duolingo doesn't provide, or I wouldn't expect. And so I think it's those sort of ways where we can emulate reality in things that don't necessarily look real and increase the sense of reality without necessarily needing to be more visually realistic.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? Remember that design trend skeuomorphism? which
Yes.
is a design where we make things look very tactile. So a button would have a lot of drop shadows to show that it's like big, it's protruding from the surface. And this is almost skeuomorphism, but using motion. So to emulate like a very tactile, real world feeling to something, but with motion, not actual 3D design.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're very right.
I'm gonna scroll past and go to the next trend because I have a feeling we're gonna delay well, not procrastinate, just take very slow,
Yeah.
make really slow progress. So the next trend is clean design. My word, I couldn't agree more. If you have been investigating all of the new AI tools like Clean Voice, Writerly, all these grammar tools and stuff, all of the new AI websites. I don't know if, I mean, Alfie, you're also very interested in AI, but their websites are just beautiful. It's very
Yeah.
clean. It's exactly like the examples on screen
Except
here.
Midjourney. Midjourney is the one AI website that looks. It still
Really?
blows my mind up to now. Because so many beautiful things come out of Midjourney. And then
Oh,
I see the website and I'm just like, what? I was not expecting that.
interesting.
Yeah. It sort of looks like what you'd expect on like a, Windows 95 or something like that.
I think that's probably, let's see, I think it will be a trend on this page. Let's see what she writes here. So Diana says, over the years, my design style was evolving and I was gradually heading into more simple, minimal, and cleaner approach. It might be a natural way for every designer, but I'm glad that among all the trends that either stay or pass, a clean, minimal design is something that can never go wrong. And the realization of this is both eye-opening and comforting. Every time I'm suffering through different apps and websites, I find the clean and minimal ones the most pleasurable and professional looking. You don't need to follow every single trend to create a great modern digital product. It's good to be inspired with some trends, but as long as it's still looking classy and keeps your design future-proof, since trends may seem overwhelming sometimes, it's true relief for any designer.
Yeah, there's very little to argue with that.
Yeah, yeah. Although, on LinkedIn, you often see these articles or posts people say about modern the modernization of brands actually makes them devoid of personality. So if you look at the Woolworths logo, they went from a serif logo to just a non-serif W, and the Google logo that went from also a serif logo, all the logos becoming so super minimalist. I wonder if the same is going to happen because right now we find this quite appealing, attractive. But at some point, if all websites are also following the same clean aesthetic, it could also become quite monotonous.
Yeah, no, I
Because
think
this
you are
right
right.
here, yeah, it looks like Apple's website, but it also looks like some of the other AI websites we were just discussing.
I think you touched on something very important that like what you leave on the table with minimalism is that exploratory element. I think the problem with minimalism is that all roads lead to the same type of website.
Yeah,
It's sort
yeah.
of like eventually it becomes unclear whose website you're on unless their logo is
Yes.
actually on that website. And
Yeah.
so I don't think minimalism will ever take over. I think it'll be one of those things that always support the trends that are happening because I think to call minimalism a trend is maybe a little bit inaccurate because it's been so consistent.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it is true that it's one of the things that kind of people always fall back on. But I think it needs the other trends to do the exploratory work,
Yeah.
and then it will sort of distill those other trends into a new sort of almost like a new wave of minimalist
Yeah.
design.
Although I personally love like practicing minimal UI design, I often also actually, it can be the least challenging because, yeah, using some of the other stuff we discussed, like the skeuomorphism, and
Yeah.
it can be, I'm not saying it's always, like simplicity is also hard to get to, but it can be quite easy to make a minimal looking design compared to a very, like if you think of Duolingo, the craft, or any game design, the craft and the how time consuming it is to get to that level of granularity, but also brand personality. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And this can
Yeah.
sometimes feel to me like a shortcut for me personally when I'm doing UI work,
Well, look, I think
like a
it also
safe
feels
zone.
it
It's
also
risk
feels
free.
that way because there's a lot of training that you need to go through before you can actually use minimal design. Because I think the problem with minimal design is as an inexperienced designer, it becomes harder to tell the difference between a good and a bad website if they're both minimal. But especially when you're experienced, it's easy for you to tell that difference. And what I'm trying to get at in some sense is like minimalism is almost like a specialized tool that you need to know how to use. Because, for example, it's easy, for example, to just put a heading on a white area, right? And
Yeah.
say that that's
Yeah.
minimalist. But it's not actually minimalist, it's just an empty page. And I think that kind of like, it takes certain level of experience to be able to utilize that negative space properly and create something that still looks aesthetically good. So I think it, especially once you've kind of already made it across that line, it's easy to look at minimal design as lazy, but it's because you're leveraging so much past experience that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. All right, the next trend, multicolor soft gradients. I'm actually loving that gradients are coming back into the play. I must say, I can't remember when, but there was also a year where gradients was everything. And I absolutely hated it, cringe. But these very soft gradients coming back, I am loving. But it
Yeah.
can look very cuck if you don't do it right.
No, you exactly, and I think this is basically like the Instagram logo playing itself completely out. Like
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
this trend started very much with that Instagram logo, and
Is that
I
still
think
their logo? Yes, it is still. That's interesting. Did you realize that on Instagram desktop you still see their old cursive font logo, not their new modern one?
what is that real?
Yeah, I was just going to look now because of the gradients on the
But
top left corner.
I see. I definitely see the. Oh, you mean at the top? Oh, wow,
Yes,
that's interesting.
they retained like their old serif font. Interesting considering the conversation we just had with
I think it's
this.
actually smart because in most other places they don't actually use the word.
Um,
Because I was just actually thinking about that. More often than not, they just use the icon. And this actually is one of the early places I can remember where they actually use the word.
yeah.
That's strange.
Look at this example. If I scroll down, there's an example of motion combined with a gradient. It's like the soft gradient in the background of the website, like floating and molding around. And then the foreground also has this gradient shape constantly moving. Oh, I love this.
It's really cool.
Yeah. What a beautiful font. All right, next trend, high contrast monochrome. You can spot strong contrasting elements and sometimes even the whole section on many websites and apps, including the biggest players in the industry. I personally think that the reason behind this trend is similar to that I've mentioned earlier in this post. The contrast flashing of strongly contrasting elements or surfaces while you scroll through the interface can stimulate your focus. It also makes the interface quite accessible thanks to the good visibility of the elements in the text, unless you go too far with the contrast and cause eye strain, like yellow on pink.
What yellow and
I
pink
must
is
say,
that
I'm
like
seeing,
contrast?
yellow on,
But
like pink on. It's not very legible.
yes. But it's not high contrast is what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. You know who I'm seeing using this trend? Airbnb. Some of their landing pages, the only color element is their logo. Let me go have a look.
Yeah, you're right.
If you go to their help page, for instance, or one of their articles, it's not even the logo of their help center is their pink brand. It's black.
Well, but I think I do.
It's something.
It works for me. Like I think it's even though it's not super flashy, I find that it sometimes designers can get in their own way, and so I feel every now and then it is good to kind of just sort of get back to the basics in some sense.
Yeah,
And I think
but you see, like, look at this big, big contrasting black and white blocks. Let's get back to the article. The next trend is dark, futuristic, cosmic UI.
Cool. I
Dark
like
UI. I knew you would like it. I don't know why, but I just knew you would. So the article reads, dark UI evolved into something bigger than just a night or dark mode option to choose. Actually, more and more brands are switching to the dark version of their products and pages. I personally think that it may be easier to catch the user's attention with dark UI than it is because it's more unusual and intriguing than typical content on a white background look, and creates a futuristic or sometimes even cosmic vibe. That I can definitely agree with. All dark UI I find I associate with like a sense of mystery and cosmology.
And I like it so much. Like, not only do I like the aesthetic, I also like that sort of type of website and general subject matter. I think the world could do with a lot more mystery and magic.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think why more products wouldn't use this trend, but it's obviously the connotation, personality of the brand. If it's something quite uplifting or professional, a lot of people don't associate or like using dark colors with that brand personality. Yeah.
To me,
But
if
it
I'm
is
honest,
beautiful.
after I saw Spotify, I realized if you don't choose a dark UI, it's just because you don't want to. There's never there isn't a good reason to not choose dark UI other than your own preference. Just because it can achieve everything that a light website can achieve, except in specific, extremely serious situations. Like if the website is dealing with a serious topic, then I wouldn't put it in a dark theme. But other than that, it's always the best. Hashtag not biased.
All right. Next trend, real life material imitations. I haven't really spotted this trend much.
A lot of Web3. Web3 is in this game a lot.
Is it like just the morphing of shapes? Is that what she means here? Like
No,
what's the
but it's
example
also
we
like,
saw earlier?
No, it's more like what it looks like. Like you see, they kind of look like real things. Some of them, like this, for example, looks like it might be a bubble or something strange like that. The one that says "See the future." Then underneath all that,
Which
one, it kind of
is,
looks like
that is like a cornea, an eye.
Oh, didn't realize.
See the future.
And then that other one underneath looks like glass, and then the prism. So they're all imitating real sort of substances or material.
Glass morphism, clay morphism.
But it's because that one's beyond glass morphism, because glass morphism is where you sort of like use like a background blur and white fill basically to create that glass effect, similar to what Apple does, right? But this, to me, is more like they're creating things that look like there's a piece of glass on the website. Like rather than trying to imitate glass in the UI, they're actually using elements that look like glass.
Would it extend into the rest of the website? Because all the examples we see is all like hero visual assets. But if you like engage with the website, the sign up form, or the help center, how would you actually use this extended into?
It doesn't. I think it's not a sustainable design approach. But I've seen a couple of websites that have tried, but it gets tired really quickly because it's too visually, it's too loud.
Intense.
Visually.
Yeah. It demands a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It's not very subdued.
And it doesn't provide a lot of value.
Yeah. She also writes, important observation to add here, glass morphism seems to be on the rise. You can easily witness glass morphic effects on website now, such as the navigation bars and decorative elements. I wouldn't really say there's nav bar. Is it the blur that she's referring to? That is like the glass morphism that blurs in the back?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's
because
not
it's
a very
the
good
contrast.
example.
No. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Gigantic typography. Yeah, I've definitely seen this one. A very visible, strong trend nowadays, mostly used on websites due to the bigger screen resolutions to achieve a minimal brutalist raw effect vibe, often with full screen photos and noticeable animations. Sans serif geometric typography is not going anywhere and will always be a safe, functional choice for interfaces. I mean, I don't hate it. I'm not going to say I'm like in love with it.
It's not very scalable.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a brochure website type of style.
Exactly. Don't do this for mobile sites, I would say. Big headings, especially. So I've realized this recently. So I work for a company that operates in, how many geos? I think 5. And we come up with beautiful designs. And the one landing page we recently designed actually utilized this trend where the headings are massive. And I say massive, I think it's about 60 points, the font size. Yeah. Massive.
Crazy.
That does not work for languages like Italian or German. Especially on mobile. That word wraps into 3 lines. It looks horrific. Yeah. It looks like hiccuping or stuttering. So I think for English, maybe, but it's not a trend I can see likely being used with languages that have very long syllables and words and stuff.
Makes sense.
The next trend here is sentimental design. As I like to tidy things up on a daily basis, let's put all the new brutalist, vintage, retrowave 1980s magazine poster-like trends into one box and call them sentimental design. As much as they can serve great visual purpose, depending on a product or service they are trying to sell, they are often a triumph of form over function. At the same time, it's refreshing to see something original and completely distinctive from time to time. Yeah, so this is like the opposite of the minimal, clean design.
Yeah, it is cool. I'm not necessarily a personal fan of it. I think I'm extremely sensitive to the fact that it puts form over function, and that always irritates me. So I struggle to appreciate like aesthetics of this kind.
Have you noticed, though, ironically, a lot of design conferences use this style for their conference websites, and I find it so terrible to try and actually navigate the website, the program, the speaker schedule. It's almost intimidating. I just kind of go, I'm not going to attend the conference if it's this difficult
Yeah, yeah, they're not doing themselves any favors by doing this, and I think they actually go on to say that in the article, it's not the
Yes.
best plan.
Yeah. And here she even mentions Figma and Gumroad being popular exceptions that got negative feedback using this.
No, no. So they said they got positive. So they said
Yes.
many brands decided to switch to
Yes.
brutalist design, but have received negative feedback.
Yes, I'm with you.
It's
But Figma hasn't.
Yeah.
Why
because
would
obviously
Figma?
Figma's
Figma's like
amazing.
it's like a cult. And I'm part of that cult.
And I am one of the cult leader member advocate people.
Absolutely. Got the t-shirt, got the all of it. All right. That was it. Wow. Okay. Those are the trends apparently that we should be jumping onto this 2023 season. Is there anything you
Yep.
feel that was missed? Any trends you've come across?
Not for 2023, but I've seen a trend that I think is coming. But I think it's still like another 2 years out.
And
And
that
actually-
is, please delight us with your
So-
predictions.
I think a lot of, at least the large scale design systems, are going to start creating like, I don't know, I haven't even thought about the words for this yet. So it's approach that Material Design's latest design system is taking, and that's almost like, what's the word when you can break a thing into its individual pieces?
Deconstruct?
Modular. So they're creating like a modular sort of UI where elements can kind of like exist in different spaces. So, for example, the type of UI elements that you would use on a desktop versus a phone for a long time were quite different. Like, for example, how you treat nav on a phone versus how you treat nav on a desktop were quite different. And then these other form factors came in, from TVs to extra small devices. And so like the range just kept on getting bigger. So it almost seems as though both Material Design, but it also even seems like iOS is heading that way from the perspective of app clips. But being able to almost build a UI using modular elements rather than having specific elements for a specific type of device. And I think that's because eventually we're going to step away from screens and use either glasses or goggles or a projector or AR or VR or something like that, but we're no longer going to be constrained to a specific space. And so you'd actually want a UI where you can just add stuff. And so I think this like modular approach to things is on the rise.
I think it's like the true meaning of what responsive design is. And how things
that's-
morph and, from one size or one place to another.
Yeah. And I think it's good because I think one of the advantages that you'll see, and Apple actually are also investing very much into that direction, is now like UI elements can actually be shared between an iPhone and a MacBook, or an iPhone and a iPad. And that's essentially what enables you to use something like Sidecar with Apple. It's that your laptop and your iPad are using the same elements, just collapsed and arranged differently, so they can actually be shared between each other. And I think it looks like Material is going in the same sort of direction.
Yeah. It's also because an iPad Pro is about 1 inch away from being a MacBook in size.
Yeah. It's literally just like a MacBook screen taken off a computer. And
Like my
like you put
MacBook
the motherboard
Air.
in the back.
Yes. My MacBook Air and my iPad Pro. I think my iPad Pro is a 12.9 inch and the laptop's a 13 inch. That's... They're identical. The MacBook is only bigger, the MacBook Air, because of the black frame of the screen. It's not edge to edge screen.
Wow. That's
But
crazy.
I swear the screen is about exactly the same size. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that is a wrap for 2023 visual trends. I'm quite curious to see how this is going to unfold within the next year, how right or wrong this is. I do think what this article did not anticipate is obviously the big release of ChatGPT last year, November, and the actual impacts that it will probably also have on UI. I think natural language UI is going to also become quite a big thing. And I think a lot of visual trends will have to adapt to accommodate for that. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. But yeah, have a look and see. We're going to release another episode where we're going to discuss more articles, and we'll check you soon.